In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
I was on your show not long ago, and we had a good long talk about Jack Kennedy, the Kennedy assassination. We explored the various theories about that. I think we're both of the mindset that the CIA was involved, heavily involved, if not the architects of the whole operation. So I wanted to play you a clip. Bobby Kennedy had a long sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson this week on Tucker's new show on Twitter. Have you seen that yet?
Just before I went on your show, I started listening to that interview, but I only got to the part where they were discussing the Secret Service detail, which Bobby was denied.
Ah, yes, that's a whole nother story. But I queued up this particular spot because it's more about the JFK assassination. And well, I'll let Bobby pick up the story here. You'll see what he's talking about.
But what happened after that is then in 1979, the House Assassinations Committee met for a year and a half. And they looked at much more evidence than the Warren Commission did, including, Alan Dulles. Alan Dulles had run the Warren Commission. He was the head of the CIA who my uncle fired. When my uncle died, he said, I'm glad the little shit is dead. He thought he was a god. That's what he said to a young reporter. And then he becomes head of the commission that is, it shouldn't have been called the Warren Commission. It should be called the Dulles, because Earl Warren had a full-time job at the Supreme Court. All the other guys on the Warren Commission had full-time jobs as senator and congressman. The only guy who went to every meeting and, looked at every piece of evidence and developed the questions for the witnesses was Alan Dulles. He was running the entire Warren Commission. And he should have been the prime suspect in the crime. And he was communicating secretly with the people at the CIA, with David Atlee Phillips, with George Johannides, who was the CIA liaison, telling them what questions were going to be asked and what they should reveal, and with J. Edgar Hoover at the same time. The whole thing was a coordinated kind of kabuki theater. But then Congress goes back and investigates it in 79. And Congress then comes back after a year and a half, seeing a lot more stuff, and says, and they conclude this was a conspiracy.
Yes.
So they make that official. So anybody who says it was just Lee Harvey Oswald is differing from the people who actually made the investigation.
So given that,
most of the people on that staff who I've talked to believe that it was the CIA. And as you know, at that time, the dispute between them was the mob and the CIA, because there was a lot of mob involvement. Johnny Roselli, Sam Giancana, who was the Chicago boss, Santos Traficante, who was the Tampa boss, and Carlos Marcello, who was the New Orleans boss, were all involved. And they all had casinos in Havana. And they were working with the CIA to assassinate Castro. So they had hitmen at their disposal, and they were training Cubans who were sharpshooters for Batista as hitmen. And I've talked to some of the hitmen. I've talked to Antonio Vecchiano, who was involved, and who was also David Atlee Phillips' handler. David Atlee Phillips was his handler, and he was Lee Harvey Oswald's handler. So Vecchiano met Oswald in Dallas I think in September of 1963. I've talked to, the people who were actually working for the CIA and the mob at that time, to kill Castro, and how they were then pivoted to this, some of them were pivoted to this new project.
if you become president, what do you do about those 4 million federal employees, about the agencies which are running effectively as autonomous governments within our government? Like, how do you? When was the last president who controlled the agencies? And how would you do it?
I don't know. I feel like I'm probably, and I don't want to seem like, I'm being vain, but I feel that because of the confluence of my experiences over the past 40 years, that I'm actually probably the only one that can unravel that agency capture. And let me tell you this, my daughter-in-law, who is co-running my campaign with Dennis Kucinich, Amaryllis Fox, was a CIA agent in the clandestine service for most of her career. And what she'll tell you, and she has a very sanguine view of the CIA, and the same as mine, and also understands all this evidence that the agency, was involved in the murder of my uncle and the cover-up, continues to be involved in the cover-up. But what Amaryllis will tell you is that of the 24,000 people who work for the agency, that 20,000 of them are patriotic Americans and good public servants. And that there's some people, mainly in a plans division. The espionage division, the CIA, is made up of extraordinary people, principally, who are doing an important job of protecting our country. The espionage division is the division that does information gathering and analysis, and the president needs that. The plans division is the action division. They're the ones that assassinate people, fix elections, overthrow governments, and do all the things that I think we're paying for in our foreign policy today and in our domestic policy. My father was going to separate those two divisions. My uncle ultimately was going to do that too. My uncle thought the CIA, he came out of his office during the Bay of Pigs and he said, I want to take the CIA, shatter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. He then asked my father to run the agency. He said, you're the only one I trust to do this. And my father said it, and my grandfather said, you can't do that. You can't, it would be like Molotov and Stalin. You can't have the brother of the president running a secret spy agency with all this extraordinarily hidden power. So they brought in John McCone to run it, but John McCone, was not able to handle it. And my father, a week before he died, told one of his closest friends, Pete Hamill, who you may have known, that he was
Pete Hamill, the journalist?
Yeah, the journalist.
Yeah, of course.
He told Pete Hamill said, what are you going to do about the CIA? And my father said, I'm going to separate the plans division from espionage, and that's the only way to make it work. And that still makes a lot of sense today. Incidentally, I had dinner with Mike Pompeo, 3 weeks ago. And he said something really interesting to me.
Wait, you had dinner with Mike Pompeo?
Yeah, in Las Vegas. And he said something.
What was that like?
It was the weirdest dinner I've ever been to. If I told you the other people were at that dinner.
Well, because I just can't imagine I know Mike Pompeo. I'm not attacking Mike Pompeo, but I can't imagine two people with more different views.
No, I've always, I have a kind of natal hostility toward Mike Pompeo, but I never knew him. But just because he was, for people who don't know, he was the CIA director and he was Secretary of State under Trump. But he's an interesting guy.
He's smart,
very smart. He's Harvard. I think he went to Harvard Law School.
He did.
Harvard undergrad, and I think he had a military career.
Army officer. Yep.
And he, he's by all. On paper, he's kind of a great American. By all, his CV is extraordinary. And you never know. You make judgments about people before you meet them. And my judgment about him, I still don't know what to think of him. But this, what he said.
So you wound up at dinner. I'm sorry, Bobby Kennedy, Mike Pompeo in Vegas at dinner. If I'd stumbled across that, I would have stopped.
It wasn't just the two of us. It was the rest of the group makes the story even weirder. So I'm not even gonna. I don't know if I'll even go there. But he said to me before dinner, I had a moment with him, and he said to me, when I was at the CIA, I did not do what I should have done to fix that agency. And he said,
no joke.
And he was expressing regret, and he said. And then he turned to me and like looked me dead in the eye and he said, the entire upper echelon of that agency is made up of individuals who do not believe in the democratic institutions of the United States of America. That's a quote. And
But so it was Mike Pompeo who convinced Trump not to release the file. And it was a guy who worked for Mike Pompeo texted me the day after I revealed that those files showed CIA complicity in your uncle's death, which they do, because I talked to someone who read them. And I said that on Fox News. And I got a text from a guy who works for Mike Pompeo informing me that I had just broken federal law and that anyone who had told me that was a felon because we had revealed classified information. And I said, wait a second, that classified information suggests the US government was involved in the murder of an American president. Yeah, that's Mike Pompeo's position on that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit weird for him to say, I think.
Well, there's 1 billion documents classified.
Yeah, I know.
Top secret. So, they can call it, they can stamp that stamp on anything they want to. That's a lawyer's trick, to put.
And he was also behind convincing Trump not to pardon Assange.
Yeah, well, that confirms my earlier assessment of Mike Pompeo.
That's interesting. You like him? No, it's a lot. Okay, so you have.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just leave that there and let it sink in what you just heard.
Yeah.
There's some breaking news there. What do you think, Mike?
Well, the first question that popped into my mind was I'd like to ask Bobby, was Pompeo sober when he told that to you? Apparently, people are more truth tellers when they're after a few stronger ones. So who knows if they met?
Veritas.
Exactly. And if you know Veritas, and if they met in Vegas, that would make sense, right? But who knows? It might have been Pompeo signaling to him, "Hey, I tried to do a good job. Just in case you become president, just remember me as a nice guy." I don't know. Maybe I'll escape to Israel or something. But well, it's interesting. I have no doubt I have no reason to doubt the veracity of what Bobby said, and it is interesting. But I also would love to find out who were the other members of that crew that he sat with in Vegas. Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out someday.
Yeah, he didn't want to name any names, but the whole story, and I'd heard about this dinner that he had with Pompeo a few weeks ago, and my response was the same as Tucker's. I was like, Bobby, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? I mean, he'll talk to anybody. And he had Mike Pompeo is a charming guy. He's a Kansas guy, and he knows how to turn on that farm boy charm. And I think
he's got the swagger. Yeah,
he does. I think that's how he weaseled his way into Trump's good graces. What I got out of that was him trying to weasel into Bobby's good graces too. But I thought Tucker did an excellent pushback on that to say, hey, last year when I did that story with my secret CIA source who has looked at these documents and it believes that the CIA murdered your uncle, Jack. It was Pompeo's guy that, texted me and said, you've just violated national security. You're mishandling classified information and your source ought to be in prison. And that's the exact same thing that Pompeo said to Megyn Kelly after Yahoo News did the story about how the CIA under Pompeo was planning to kidnap and or assassinate Julian Assange.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Pompeo said that Yahoo staff and the reporters and the sources should all be tried under the Espionage Act and imprisoned.
I'm curious. Have you guys come across this theory? I won't call it a conspiracy theory, but Tucker's old man, he had associations with the CIA.
That's right.
And I don't know where I read this, but I think it was a source I reach out for fairly often. I'm not sure if it was Mint Press News or another one, but it was alleged that Tucker already had the knowledge of who killed JFK on solid grounds because his father confirmed that to him at one point. I don't know if you guys came across that.
No,
version.
I've never heard that.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly possible.
Because I think his father was head of Radio Liberty at some point, and Radio Liberty was obviously connected with Langley, and he never because I don't know if he was officially in an official capacity working with Langley or unofficially, but if it was Radio Liberty, then he had to had contacts with the Central Intelligence Agency. So that's just, as I said, just the thought I threw out there, because I did come across a theory that Tucker sort of to push away the suspicion that I might have been his father, said it was a source, but he didn't say if the source was alive. If it's so basically the
True.
plausible deniability, so to say, right?
Well, that was my thought. I hope he was being damn careful with this source, like discussing nothing over electronic communications. When they had that conversation, I hope they were deep in the woods with no devices around. If there were any documents shared, I hope they were passed hand to hand, read, and then burned.
I think after Tucker realized the NSA was snooping on his discussions about a potential interview with Vladimir Putin, I think he took that into consideration. I hope he did, at least. Yeah.
Yes. They know every move he makes.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time. Rick, did you have any questions for Mike before we go?
No, I'm just really glad that we finally got someone on the show who's not a communist and is
or a LaRouche person, right?
Yeah, that's right. And very much in alignment with where I'm at politically. So we're not strange bedfellows at all. We're definitely in the same camp, and I'm really appreciative of your time today.
Yeah. Thank you guys once again. It was an honor to speak to your audience. I love your show. I've been following Maverick News and Strange Bedfellows. You guys are positively crazy. That's why I like listening to you. It's really an honor to be here. And I hope to come back sometime. I don't know. Maybe we could do a Christmas special, sometime in the future, for example.
Whenever you get your next holiday over there in Poland, right? Today's a holiday. That's why you're available.
Today's a holiday. Yeah. Then the next holiday is November 1st, All Saints, and then November 11th. But as I said, I mean, I'm really thinking right now about a possible sort of live transmission from Poland on election night, because I think a lot of people in the West are going to be watching that to see what happens, because a lot of stupid things that our government can do, unfortunately, might bounce back to policy preferences of your own governments. So I think we should be watching that closely, and I'll be doing my reporting, trying to get as much info as I can. But as I said, thank you once again for giving me the time, courtesy, and just presenting myself. It was a real honor, and hope to see you guys again soon.
It is such a pleasure to speak with you. You're a delight. And where can people find you? Where can they watch your show, and where can they follow you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @mgkrupa. You can find me on YouTube. We still have a channel. Still, hopefully, YouTube doesn't knock us out. Although, as I told Lori and Rick backstage, we are planning to install a new Rumble channel. So we have that under consideration to have in reserve. It's obviously something you should consider. So our YouTube handle is VotumTV, VotumTV. That's where you can find all my interviews. And oh, by the way, spoiler alert, in September, we're going to be having a special guest on VotumTV, the one, the only Sean Stone, actor and son of the great Oliver Stone. So that'll be interesting and exciting. And we had a Canadian angle recently because we had Maxime Bernier also. So we're trying to be global in our outlook. And those would be, I'm just starting my Substack. So the only post that I put there was the one that Scott published on his Substack also, but I hope to expand that also. So the main two places where you can find me is Twitter @MGKrupa and VotumTV on YouTube.
Well, thanks again for joining us. You are a great guest. I knew this would be another delightful conversation. Last time it was just you and me, but this time I wanted to bring Rick Walker in because I knew that you two would have so much in common. And you were a perfect guest for Strange Bedfellows. And you're not really strange, maybe just a little strange, but not really strange.
No, one of the best episodes we've had.
Wow. Definitely. Thank you guys.
Most
Great to
definitely.
hear that.
And we will see you back here again soon, or I'll be on your show. And we would love to partner with you on that election coverage in October. I'll definitely touch base with you about that and see how we can partner up and make sure that people over here in North America are paying attention, because they should be.
Indeed. I think it's, just to end off, I think it's going to be one of the most consequential elections in Poland after 1989. So definitely something to look out for.
Absolutely. It's going to have a lot to do with the future of Europe and this war. The leadership you get is going to have a lot to do with that. So once again, thank you. Thanks everyone for watching Strange Bedfellows, and we will see you back here next Saturday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. Good night, everyone.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.